Hello, my name is Heinrich Hippler, and I have been pretending to be an English nationalist on the hit game Warno for the past 2.5 years. As you can tell from the way I look and the way I dress, there is not a single drop of English blood in my veins. During this time, I have threatened to send my political rivals to Rwanda, and I have called my fellow Englishmen, quote unquote, race traitors for not agreeing with me, even though we're not the same race because they're English and I'm pretending to be. The British divisions in Warno used to be underpowered, and they were underpowered for about 6 months since they were launched, but since then, they have been pretty much near the top every single patch. And that is in large part due to my esoteric shitposting efforts. It's also due to the balance guy Darix, who I blamed for most of, if not all of my problems, even though I know that most of them aren't his fault. And he is largely responsible for bringing the British divisions back up to strength. He is not the evil boogeyman that I've painted him as, and I actually think he's doing a relatively good job with the competitive side of the game. I do disagree with him on some aspects, but a lot of the missteps in the game, there's a limit to how much I can say because of the strike team NDA and so on. A lot of the things that don't make any sense aren't directly up to him. Eugen, of course, is a company made up of many employees, and sometimes they pull in different directions. So, I made some notes here. What did I say? Yeah, threatened to deport people to Rwanda. Yes, I fought countless online arguments defending British Cold War military equipment, which is a topic I don't really care too much about. I did it because I thought it was funny, I did it because I could, and I did it because it was working. So, yeah, when I first started the UK Suppers Lobby, the UK divisions were very underpowered. If you remember First Armoured, all of its tanks were just grossly overpriced, all of its units were grossly overpriced, and there was no forward deployed component. Second UK, there were a lot of tools that are now in that division that weren't in there. The Lynx rocket pods, a personal favorite of mine, they went in there. Everything in that division was just grossly overpriced. So when we started, there was actually a good reason for doing it. And like I said, after about 6 months, things basically sorted themselves out. And I can't remember exactly when it happened, but there was a tournament final hosted by Protoss on SDL where Tiberius Rancor played second UK, and it was on two ways, and he won the tournament final in about 4 minutes with second UK. It was that patch, which was about 6 months after the British divs were released, where the British divisions were no longer suffering. They'd been brought up to strength, the problem had been fixed. In the intervening time, I just sort of thought, well, what happens if I just kind of keep going? I mean, for me, it was very, very funny. I did find it very funny. I still do find it very funny, but alas, I've had a change of heart. It's time to come clean, clean all the skeletons out of the closet, and basically, I'm a good person now. I'm just going to refer back to my notes here. What was the next thing? I apologize, and I've decided I'm a good person now. Oh yes, other things I've lied about. I don't actually have a younger brother or an older brother. I don't have any brothers. I made that up. Other things I've lied about. Oh yeah, one that I'm really not particularly proud of. In the DEF CON 2 tournament, the reason I entered that tournament was because I thought it would be funny if I teamed up with T-Man Plays and called our team T-Man Gaze. So I asked T-Man if he wanted to play, and he said, yeah, why not? He just wasn't going to join before I asked him. And then I approached the YS admins, and they said, you can't have that name, it's too rude. So where's the lie? The lie was I told them all that I was a homosexual and that they would be discriminating against me if they didn't let me have the name T-Man Gaze. I made that up. I mean, you're free to believe what you want, but I'm not gay. And I didn't even get the name. I didn't even get the name. So we ended up with the name T-Man Suffers, which was a pretty lame name. That was given to us by the admin team. And I've never told T-Man about this either, so that'll be news to him. Other notable mentions of good names in that tournament, which were rejected by the admins, were Descent Femboy Niki, and I think that was it. That was the only one I wanted to say. Descent Femboy Niki, which was Joke Retard, and Mix 90. What else is in the notes? Other things I've lied about. Oh yeah, I've sort of already covered this. Not everything is Derek's fault. I just kind of Basically, so if I start listing individual employees within Eugen whose fault it is for various decisions, then they're just going to ban me, right? Whereas if I blame the external contractor who has a lot of ideas which generally many times get ignored, there's a limit to how much I can say, right? But yeah, if I blame that guy, he can't ban me, right? So, you need a boogeyman. I mean, we might as well talk as a general sense about propaganda, right? So, you want to get something done. How do you do it? How do you convey the message? UK suffers is, I mean, maybe I'm sort of plugging myself a bit too much here. It's basically a stroke of genius. If you want to do something and get something done, get a message across, the message needs to be very, very simple. And then you simply repeat the message over and over and over again. So you'll see this a lot in the current conflict, which is currently being waged. I won't get too much into it, but you'll see all the same tactics there if you're paying attention. You need a very, very simple message, and then you just repeat the message over and over and over again, and you don't deviate from that. So there are a lot of attempts to water down the lobby. People saying things like hashtag West Germany suffers. For starters, you can tell a German came up with that because it's just very difficult to say. West Germany suffers. So it's like 6 syllables. UK suffers is 3, rolls off the tongue very, very easily. And essentially what you're doing by having West Germany suffers is you're diluting the message. And if you dilute the message, if you go after too many things at once, then you accomplish nothing. So the message has to be very, very simple. And it also has to be based in truth, right? And as we spoke about, when the divisions were first launched, they were very underpowered. It was a true message at the start. And it needs to be couched in truth. If you're just making it up completely, it doesn't make any like West Germany suffers, because they don't. Second Panzer and Fifth Panzer are two of the best 1v1 divisions in the game, and I'm coming around to the view that TKS is actually very, very strong as well. So it needs to be couched in the truth, and that's where the other one comes in, which we'll refer back to later. Get back to the notes here. What else have I lied about? Oh, yeah. So where have I been? What have I been doing? So I'm actually practicing Muslim. I don't usually wear what I'm wearing now. I picked this up in Saudi Arabia, which is where I've been for the past 20 something days, the past 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks approximately. I've been doing the Muslim once in a lifetime pilgrimage known as Hajj, which is where you walk around with 3 million other people and do various religious activities. If you want, you can Google it. It's basically the most difficult thing I've ever done, and I have been doing a PhD in chemical engineering for the past 3.5 years. So that was very difficult, and it opened my eyes a lot. And basically, I don't want to be an esoteric shitposter anymore. I want to be a good person. So much like the person who I modeled this channel after, a Dota 2 player by the name of Chai Kwa, it's time for me to reform and become a good person. So basically, I'm a good person now. And that'll be a very long and arduous process, and hopefully you can join me in that journey as I become a good person. Other things I've lied about. Oh yeah, so in terms of like how long has this been going on for? Obviously, I've been a Muslim for as long as I've been alive. If you recall, in the DEF CON 2 tournament, I suddenly seemed to have a lot of time on my hands, and I was talking about how I didn't feel very good. That's because I was fasting. So when I played the game, it was me and T-Man versus Integer and Lathans, but all the series were played at a pretty similar time. I said something like, "Oh man, I can't feel my leg." I hadn't had anything to eat or drink for 15 hours at that point. And then when the adrenaline started hitting at the end, I really wasn't in a particularly good way. So yeah, the signs were all around you. And indeed, some people, when I was posting those images, I posted some images on the YouTube community page. Some people actually guessed where I was from the temperature. So yes, I've been in Saudi Arabia. Like I said, it was very difficult, and it really made me rethink my life. And I don't want to be a bad person anymore, so I'm a good person now. So why did I start the channel and what's next? I suppose that's kind of the final skeleton in the closet. I've come clean about basically everything else. So yeah, the channel's been around for a long time. It's generally just me messing around with my friends. But in terms of going hard on Wano, what basically happened was when I first started playing Wano, I was rank 1 for like 6 hours on a Friday or something. and I started joining the tournaments, and I found that I was having a lot of fun. And my tournament games would frequently be cast, or I think it's cast as opposed to casted, because you don't call it casted iron, right? You call it cast iron. I'm going to keep saying casted. No, I'm not. I'm going to start saying cast from now on. My games were frequently cast by the guys Bandana and Protoss. Because I have a very aggressive play style. I've mellowed out quite a bit. I've mellowed out quite a bit over the last 2.5 years, but I have quite an aggressive play style. It makes for very entertaining watching. And sometimes I throw games in really funny ways. So I'm a funny person to watch. So they would always cast my games. Basically, every game I played would be cast by one or both of them, and I became addicted to the attention. I really liked the attention. I really liked the attention, and then so essentially, I had like what I thought was a fairly minor disagreement with Bandana actually, about the current war in East Europe, and I thought it was a fairly minor disagreement. But after that, he stopped casting my games, and he didn't say anything like he didn't tell me he would do that. Obviously, it's entirely up to him what he does with his time. But I waited a couple weeks and I was like, oh man, I can't get my fix, my attention fix. Just couldn't get my attention fix anymore. So I thought, well, okay, I'll just do it myself. Uh, so I started casting the games myself, and I was a bit vindictive in it. I was like, I want to beat this guy because he's stopped casting my games. I think I can do what he does, but better. So I did it, and I did beat him. I mean, it's difficult to say what beating him in entails, but basically, I get more views than him, so I guess I won, right? And that's why I started the channel. And so I basically accomplished all my objectives. And from there, it's just been esoteric shitposting and basically just me trying to get through my PhD. So this is this has been a nice break from my PhD, and it will keep going for at least another. So my submission deadline's in February, unless it gets moved back again. So it'll keep going at least until then. If I'm gonna bail out, I'll tell you. But basically, I've accomplished all my objectives. So that's why it's time to come clean. I mean, it's been time for a long time, really. The joke stopped being funny quite a while ago. The only reason I kept doing it was because, well, I mean, okay, well, it is still funny. But I was actually staggered by the amount of anti-English racism on the internet. As somebody who, I don't look English, I've never really been privy to this, and I thought it was a bit of a meme that people would say it. But no, there's a lot of people in the community who hate me because I'm English, right? I've just knocked my microphone there. A couple of people in particular, who I'm not going to name, but they've really been going after me for a long time because they absolutely hate English people. You know it's really sad. I never realized how difficult English people have it. There's a lot of people out there that hate them just for the way they look, and as somebody growing up in a post 9/11 world in a Western country, that's racism is not something I've ever actually experienced until now, when I pretended to be a white nationalist. So yeah, that was that really it really upset me, and so I kept the joke going because basically to spite those people. But you essentially can't win against somebody who doesn't value their time, because life is limited, and they're wasting their life, and what they essentially do is pull you down to a level where you waste yours. Which brings me on to the final thing I wanted to talk about, which was, so like, where do we go from here? So, I'm gonna still be playing the game. The videos will still be going. The tournaments will still be going. I might as well have a face cam on it now. I do need a shave, actually. But yeah, I mean, people know what I look like now, so that'll keep happening. But in terms of my involvement, so there's a lot of things I do, like with the lobbying, that you guys don't really see, because it's happening behind the scenes. And I'm going to be taking a back seat in terms of the lobbying, because, like I said, you can't win against somebody who doesn't value their time. Essentially, there are like four main groups vying for game direction, right? What should the game look like? There's four main groups. You've got me and a few other people who are, as Integer aptly named us, the fundamentalists, fun in capital letters. And the idea behind our play style, our lobby, and the UK suffers thing is kind of a big part of that. Is the game should be fun because video games are video games. It's not realistic. There's nothing really realistic about it. That they say, oh, it's realistic. It really isn't. World War Three would not go like this at all, and the Soviet Union collapsed under its own weight. Right, it did not launch World War Three and actually start winning. And in order to win, you need like what, a 3-1 force advantage. This just didn't happen, and the basic premise of the game is nonsensical and unrealistic. And so then everything that follows on from that is inherently unrealistic. Lots of unrealistic things in the game. Infantry units can shoot 850 meters. The whole scaling thing is wrong. You get 260 points a minute from the government to spend on a tank. So everything about the game is unrealistic. The Soviet tanks are actually useful. They don't just fall apart. Everything about the game is unrealistic. And so so judging, going from that basic premise that the game is inherently unrealistic, fun should be what is maximized. People should try and make the game as fun as possible. We've essentially lost, right? As a group, we have lost. We have not won. The lobby is essentially dead, and this is for a few reasons. One, people who like to have fun get bored and then go and do something else. And that is essentially what has happened to most of the fundamentalists. I'm basically the last man standing. I mean, Integer's around a lot. He sort of comes and goes. But all the other fundamentalists quit a long time ago because they're like, well, I'm not having fun. There are lots of other video games, and so I'm going to go play those. And we've essentially lost to people who don't want to have fun. And those are the historical revisionists. So I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to make another Darix-esque boogeyman. But basically, the historical consultant that Eugen have hired is a Yugoslavian nationalist Serb. So just think about that for a couple seconds. He's a Yugoslavian nationalist Serb. So, I wonder what bias he might have. I wonder what he might be doing a bit differently there. I wonder what his thought processes are. And so that there's a lot of decisions in the game where you're like, why does the T80 shoot at 10 rounds a minute? Why the pack tanks so good? Why are thermals, which are majority NATO, not modeled? Why are realistic reverse speeds, which the Soviet tanks would suffer hugely from? A T80 goes backwards at like 5 kilometers an hour, if that. Why are they not modeled? And all these things, you start thinking about it. And when I tell you that the historical accuracy consultant is a Yugoslavian nationalist Serb, it all starts making a lot of sense. And yeah, so there's a lobby of historical revisionists, and that's really the only thing to call them, because they really do have their biases. And as we discussed, the Soviet Union collapsed, right? They really didn't have the best stuff, but it is what it is. And so they spend all day lobbying because they don't play the game, right? They don't really care. What they find fun, how they entertain themselves, is talking about very obscure military documents on the internet. That's how they entertain themselves. So you can never really beat somebody like that. If you actually enjoy playing the game and you're busy playing the game and they get their kicks from posting on a forum, you're never going to beat them because while you're playing the game, they are posting on the forum while you're doing whatever relaxing activities you enjoy in order to relax. What they find relaxing is DMing the developers to get their changes in. So the fundamentalists have lost essentially, and I've just sort of been banging my head against a wall for the last, I don't know, about 6 months. I mean, it became obvious that we'd lost quite a while ago. In order to hold back the tide. And I just can't really be bothered anymore. I want to enjoy my life, and so I'm not going to be doing that anymore. In terms of the other two groups, there is then Eugen, who obviously make the game, and all advice is filtered through them. So sometimes people ask for things, and I can't be too specific because of the NDA, right? I can't bring up any specific examples because of the NDA. But there's been a few examples where people have asked for things, and the thing has been like partially implemented because Eugen have agreed with part of it. And then you end up with a situation where nothing really, what has been implemented makes absolutely no sense, doesn't really work. And that's why that happens. And the fourth party is, of course, Derek's the balance guy. He isn't Eugen. They choose whether or not to implement his ideas, and it's sort of the same thing there again, where things get partially implemented. I'm not mad at Eugen. I mean, this is how every company in the world works. I'm just saying this is how it is. And the point I was trying to make was that, when these things happen, it's just not necessarily Derek's fault. Usually he had a pretty good idea of how to fix a problem. It might not be a solution I agree with. It might be something like slowing the game down, which I personally don't particularly enjoy. But generally he has holistic visions, which are then partially implemented. So it's easy for me to point the finger and blame Derek. So it's really not his fault. So hopefully that doesn't get me removed from the strike team. I haven't said anything particularly outrageous. I don't think I've violated the NDA. I'm a chemical engineer. I had to sign some for my work. I know how they work. But basically, it's not Derek's fault. Don't blame Derek's. Yeah, so where does the channel go? I'm going to keep organizing the tournaments. I'm going to keep playing. If I ever get a life, which I would like a life at some point, then I will quit. But I will tell you before that happens. And all that's left is to thank all of you. Honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart. The PhD has been very difficult. Although now having now been on Hajj, I think the PhD is actually kind of easy, having now done something more difficult. But I found it very tough, and you guys have really helped me out. This has been a great creative outlet for me. It's very relaxing to play this video game. I know a lot of people say this game is stressful. It's really not. Try a normal RTS if you think this game is difficult. Try a normal RTS, because in addition to the fighting, you also have the base building, and all of the interactions happen about twice or three times as quickly. All the fights happen much quicker. This is quite a slow game for old people. But yeah, this has been good, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. But yeah, the UK doesn't suffer. I'm not gonna be talking about that before anymore. But it is the objective truth that Wano is a game made in France.